Hi, I'm Mark Scherer. I'm the CEO and founder of Encompass Life and the host of the Encompassing Life podcast. Today we have April Pride, and that's her real name. And she's from the Pacific Northwest. She is here to talk about psychedelics, cannabis, um, women, what women like about THC and how different they are with men. And we just had a quick little conversation to get prepped for the interview. Fascinating lady, and I'm really enthusiastic to have you here. April, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate being here.
You're welcome. Great smile too, April.
For those of you that are just listening, yeah.
Yeah, if you listen real carefully, you can probably hear her smile. You, you have a couple of her beverages, you could definitely see her smile.
Yeah, that's funny.
All right. So, April, you're involved in a company called SetSet.
Mhm.
And what does SetSet even mean?
So SetSet is a psychedelic education platform focused on psychedelic integration, and we create PDF downloads really focused on how women can use these substances. And SetSet speaks to set and setting, which is one of the main pillars of psychedelic therapy or using psychedelics. So set is your mindset, making sure your head's straight, and before leading up to a journey and after or while you're microdosing, and then setting is your physical surrounding, the people, the place, the props that you are using to support your experience.
And how did you get into doing this?
I started working in cannabis 10 years ago. And when I began, I created stash goods to store, smoke, and share cannabis. I'm a designer. I went to architecture school and I graduated from Parsons, have my master's from there. And I thought I was just going to be designing cool shit and having a good time. And what I
Mhm.
learned was that women were using cannabis in ways that I wasn't aware of beyond recreational use, as we call it. So I
What
learned a lot.
in what ways are you talking about?
Pain management,
Mhm.
stress, alcohol reduction.
Mhm.
So, and a lot of the pain management was related to autoimmune disorders, which women are 7 out of 10 diagnoses go to women. And one of those disorders being endometriosis, which
Mhm.
is related to pelvic health. And so there's something right with inflammation and how this plant was helping to mitigate symptoms. And so
Mhm.
about 4 years ago, a little over 4 years ago, I noticed that influencers on Instagram were talking that had canna in their handle were talking about psilocybin mushrooms. And I had built up a business and sold it to the largest cannabis company in the world and really shifted that brand's focus from being cool shit to helping women utilize this plan in a way that could really help them improve their well-being. And I wanted to do the same in psychedelics because I'm really here for consumer protection. These are mind-altering substances, and some of the most harrowing experiences people have been with cannabis, not with psychedelics, right? So something that's legal can definitely take a turn and scare the living shit out of you, right? So I know that psychedelics has the same potential to do that if they're not used with reverence. And so I decided to focus on psychedelics for women because if we know that the cannabis plant and the cannabinoids interact with a woman's physiology, specifically their female hormones, it only makes sense that the same is true for psychedelics. So I jumped in with a podcast to begin to educate myself on this. And yeah, for 4 years, that's what I've been working on. And so last year I launched SetSet with a licensed therapist to make sure that women had the information that they needed in order to use, yeah, to get what they were looking for out of working with these various compounds. I can't hear you.
Thank you.
Mhm.
You said women are looking for like smaller amounts,
It
main
goes all across the board. Across the
across
board.
the board.
Mhm. We have a microdosing program, but women, really the people are seeing huge change with small amounts of psilocybin specifically, and in some cases LSD. We also know that people who have consumed larger doses of psilocybin, LSD, MDMA, rank these experiences within the top 3 transformative experiences of their life, right? Along with having a child, losing a loved one. Yeah.
So you got into it about 10 years ago. Were you using before then?
I never,
Recreationally? Recreationally?
yeah, I've never had my own stash of any sort until it was legal in Washington State,
Mm-hmm.
which was in 2014. And my second son, the baby in the family, was born in 2010, and I had stopped drinking. And so I really was bored of that. And I didn't want to go back to drinking, but I saw that I needed something. And my ex-husband and I talked about it, and he was like, I just think it's not really sustainable to think that, nothing ever. So I don't know, I started taking lower doses of cannabis, and I noticed that it motivated me to go out and to socialize and to connect with people.
Hmm.
My younger son was older at that point, so I felt like I had more time to do that. And I was really, really surprised at how little people were talking about this.
Hmm.
So yeah.
So what does your family think about you doing this?
Well, I think we're 10 years in. I have a son about to graduate from high school, and I have the baby is now a freshman in high school, about to wrap up that year. And I would say it's, mm, I don't want to speak on behalf of them, but my older son has really struggled with me being the weed mom and me being the shroom mom. And I don't think that was something that I could have anticipated when they were younger, because I felt like I was approaching this in a very responsible way through education. But nonetheless, that is what I am. It's a lot more easy. More, it's just easier to be reductive about my work rather than really
Mm-hmm.
think about the harm reduction aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have to take the long view. And I think, he's probably starting to come around, but it really has colored their childhood in terms of who their mom is. Yeah.
Uh-huh. And your husband?
Well, we're no longer married.
Mm-hmm.
But he's always, I mean, we just had, brunch together for Mother's Day on Sunday, and lunch the weekend before for his birthday. So everything is great for all of us
Mm-hmm.
in this new form of our family. But he's been my number one supporter in all of this, because he does see how it can not only help people, but he's very, very much aligned with the need to address the social equity issues done by the harm done by the war on drugs. Yeah.
Right. A friend of mine just spoke with me the other day. He says, "Hey, you've done mushroom before?" I said, "Yeah, I did them a long time ago."
Mhm.
And she goes, "I've been microdosing." She goes, "It's like I'm walking around in ecstasy all day."
Mm.
And
Wow.
she goes,
Wow.
feel so much more, all these things. She's a very successful businesswoman as well in her own accord. But
Mhm.
she's also, she's been trying this little microdosing stuff, and it's just not enough to really get high. But she just noticed a different spring in her step, I guess.
Yes.
So
That's
yeah,
that's the best way to describe it, a spring in your step. I think that that's
yeah,
appropriate. Yeah.
the time I did it a long, long time ago, and I remember I was driving down a road going through Austin. I thought I was driving on the back of a snake, man. I was like, "Get me home." I,
Yeah. I
I
wouldn't
think,
want to be driving while I was on
well,
shrooms.
I had to get home, so I
Yeah.
was,
Oh, good point. Yeah. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
I could feel it coming on. So I got home, and whew, I was
Just in
good.
the nick of time. Yeah.
Yes, in the nick of time, right? But yeah, I tried it. I really didn't like it, so I tried it twice just to make sure I didn't like it, and then I still didn't like it, so I stayed off it. I liked other things, but mushrooms never really did it for me. Um,
I think that that's important to note, right? Like, I feel in my industry, and we'll call it an industry in psychedelics, people really think that and same with cannabis, that these are a panacea, that everyone should use them. They can solve almost any problem that you might have. But I just think, like, whiskey's not for me, vodka's not for me, wine's not for me. Like, if we want to put this in terms that, most listeners can appreciate, there's just not, it doesn't, not everybody should say yes
right,
to these things, or is going to have the experience that was promised to them. So good for
right,
you for trying it again.
yeah, yeah. Open-minded. Maybe I'll try it again. Uh, yeah, and I do stuff in consciousness now, so
Mhm.
there's ways for the body to produce chemicals as well. So that's I'm playing in that arena now, and doesn't mean I'll never try something else again or anything like that. Um, but the way I used to do it, and kind of a habitual user of it to avoid things, I wouldn't do that again.
Yes,
Yeah,
I appreciate that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. But a lot of friends speak, and you mentioned ketamine too earlier.
Mhm.
Um, I remember when ketamine came out, or people started using it. I guess it's probably 20, maybe 20 years ago now. It started getting become popular.
From a
So
recreational standpoint?
yeah, recreational. Yeah,
Yeah.
people were doing pretty large amounts of ketamine,
Mhm.
and um, doing mixing ketamine and ecstasy and that type of stuff. What I remember, and I never have yet to do ketamine either. But what's the benefits of that? Are you doing doing a lot of it, or just small amounts, or how's that working? I guess
It
it
re
depends on the person, huh?
it depends on the person, and it depends on the route of administration. So during the pandemic, it was possible for you to have low dose ketamine lozenges shipped to your home through telehealth appointments. But depending on who you talk to, some people, and that's the only way that I've ever worked with it, is low dose lozenges in my home. But if you talk to practitioners who prescribe it or who are working with it with patients, they would argue that the science says that it's IV where people are having the best outcomes for the long, meaning um, that the results last the longest. And in a hospital setting, what happened was ketamine has been around since the early night, no, since
It's
the
a
19,
harsh tranquilizer.
that is one application for it,
Right.
yes. But when it was discovered in the 1950s, where they really found success with it was on the battlefields in Vietnam, because they needed to do amputation right there, right? So they needed a
Right.
person to leave their body and dissociate so that they could perform surgery immediately. And
Mm.
so it's on the World Health Organization's list of essential medicines because it doesn't require refrigeration, it's easy to transport, and it's cheap. And so in hospital rooms and ER hospitals or departments around the world, they've been using ketamine forever. And so they would have people come in who are having a psychotic break, and they would use it to sedate them. And what they found over and over again is that people who were suicidal, it took away their suicidal thoughts within an hour.
Huh.
Yeah. And so then it started to become used as a mental health intervention. And then we started getting more intentional. Doctors started getting more intentional with how they were using it in this way. And now, because it's a Schedule 3 drug, not a Schedule 1 drug, there's research that's been, it's easier to research, and it's easier to prescribe. And so I think, there are concerns, and there should be concern about shipping it to people's home without really proper medical oversight, because it is the only, quote, psychedelic that is prone to abuse.
Yes. What's um I actually have yet to do it. What are the so you like hallucinate on it, or it says it's a psychedelic? Like what?
Yeah, it's used as an anesthetic and an analgesic, and it's really in a class called, it's a dissociative.
Mm.
So I would say it feels like, again, I've never done it intramuscularly. I've never had an IV treatment. There's also the only FDA approved psychedelic is a nasal spray ketamine from Johnson and Johnson's Janssen Pharmaceuticals. I've never done that. I've only had these lozenges. And so I think the effects that I've had are, muted as compared to people that have had IV or IM treatment. And it's like you're floating. Yeah, it feels like you're floating, and thoughts will pass by, and you'll grab onto one for a little bit. I've given myself, I've had treatments 3 times, and every time the first person I want to call is my older son. And all my notes are, I love my kids so much and I just want to tell them immediately. So a lot of
Sounds
very
like
positive
sound like
thoughts.
being at the dentist office and doing nitrous.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And therapists like it at lower doses because you remember what
Which,
you're discussing. Yeah, the higher doses, it's often you're like, yeah.
yeah.
I think one of the most significant outcomes for me is if you look at what's happening neurobiologically, you're creating more BDNF, brain-derived neurotropic factor. I think the N is, I think it's neurotropic. So more neuroplasticity. And there are dendrites, these finger-like extensions on our brain cells that, shrivel over time thanks to cortisol. And it's a real issue for people like me that have an ADHD diagnosis. And ketamine helps to bring those dendrites back to life so that they can receive neurotransmitters, right?
Mm.
And so I noticed the day and the week after treatment that my ADHD symptoms are so much better.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And you said you're also you also do it. You're also an advisor for different manufacturers as well. Is that correct?
Not of psychedelics, but
Uh,
but in the cannabis and the hemp THC space. Yeah,
okay. And you had a cannabis business, and you said you sold it a number of years ago.
I did. Yes.
Gotcha. And what was that for you? I'm just finding it all so fascinating what you're up to. So
Yeah. So Vanderpop was is the name of the company, and it focused on women. And I sold into the Canadian market in 2017 and was able to, I sold in before adult use was voted in by Parliament, and I stayed through the time it was enacted at the end of 2018. So I really got to be in a federally emerging adult use legal country. And the way that we can talk to consumers is so different before the federal government starts to regulate it versus after. So that was really, really interesting. Um, and what what I learned is that when you sell, ultimately what I did is sell to a publicly traded company, there is no consumer protection, right? They're just, yeah, there's not a lot of education that goes along with the product. And the people that I spoke to were women. And so after that, I started a podcast called How to Do the Pot, so I could continue to educate women on how to use cannabis in an intentional way and finding the right products and just sort of navigate this newly emerging regulated market. And then I jumped over to psychedelics because because I have ADHD and I like new things. And also, I saw that there was a real opportunity to begin to educate people in an intentional way ahead of, like, I don't know, they're just a lot of the people that have been working in psychedelics for decades cannot be public facing. They're working underground. And because I don't touch the medicine, I can be much more vocal. And I think there's a need for somebody like me that can bridge what practitioners who know so much more than I do to the consumers who are looking to use these products in a safe way.
what's the name of your podcast again?
SetSet.
No, you said your podcast.
The other, well, my podcast now is called SetSet. My first podcast is called How to Do the Pot, and I sold that to my business partner.
Okay. And so now your podcast is called SetSet.
Mm-hmm.
And you have a lot of viewers on your podcast, subscribers.
Yeah, it's ticking up more and more, right? You can see as, so 4 years ago when I started,
Mm-hmm.
there were less than 500,000 people who lived in decriminalized municipalities in the United States. And now with New Mexico, we have in Iowa. Iowa is capping the number of medical patients that have access to legal psilocybin at 2,000, but New Mexico has just legalized it for their entire state. Both of those states, by the way, was in the last month. So now we have almost 20 million people that have access to decriminalized psilocybin. So, right, there's just more access and
Mm-hmm.
people feel like they have permission to try this now. So you can see the downloads of the podcast like increase as more people realize that they can do this. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting, man. Very interesting lady for sure, April.
It's been an interesting 10 years. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, so we're doing here, we're doing everything, altering the body to produce new chemicals inside of it by our use of consciousness.
New chemicals or endogenous chemicals that are there, but you're helping to stimulate and release. Should I even say that
New,
right?
let's put it new for the individual,
Okay, yeah, that makes sense to me.
and most likely new for their lineage.
Mm.
You know, have you heard life and death exists in the power of the tongue? Like
No.
that's oh,
Mm-mm.
so every word we speak is either poison or uplifting, and so that uplifting process is a way to produce chemicals in the body that access new realms of consciousness.
Hmm.
And we get the pineal fired off, the pituitary fired off, the thymus. We get all those glands producing chemicals which are most likely new for that individual. And when they do, their whole reality changes. All their thoughts change instantaneously. So instead of trying to think positive thoughts and don't think negative thoughts like most people are using, I've studied consciousness for about 35 years. And when I was going down that route, it's like one more voice in my head trying to manage the other 50. Like that's going to work, sucked. Did
Mm.
meditation. I've tried all kind of outside products as well, and those were, I mean, they were fun. I had a lot of cool experiences, I think, from what I remember, and and still there was something missing until I found what I could do inside my own self. So
I really, so the original name, when I left How to Do the Pod, the original name of the podcast that I started immediately after was called The High Guide. And I always had an idea that I should have a podcast called The Other High Guide, which was about breath work and meditation and non-drug, we'll just say to make this
yeah,
easier,
yeah, yeah,
induced experiences. Because
right,
to your point, what we're trying to get to is really touch consciousness or get in touch with our own, right?
right, right.
Um, yeah, so what you're saying is really, really vital because I do not think that psychedelics are a shortcut to that. I just think that that's how some people are going
It's an
to find
interesting trip.
it.
It's an interesting trip along the way for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And I do hope that people find what we know is possible with
Mhm.
them. I think there are a lot of people that are getting stuck in the trip, frankly.
Yeah, I know a lot of people are on the ayahuasca stuff and all that too, where they're they start doing it. Next thing you know, 2 years later, well, how's it going? This is on my 30th trip or something. I'm like, dude, like, what do you,
Yeah.
And I can tell, hanging around them, I can tell now if somebody's on that, if somebody's been doing it, especially a lot, by the tone of their voice. They have a different tone in their voice than somebody who doesn't use it. That's really interesting.
Can you talk, I have never done, I had ayahuasca, a small amount of it in cacao, but I've never done it in ceremony or had large doses of it. So I would be
Mhm.
very curious what you mean. Yeah.
Your voice is, you're pretty grounded.
When you have ayahuasca in your
No,
system?
when people get lost in the ayahuasca stuff, they're
Yeah.
like in this airy, fairy land, and oh, I just had this wonderful trip, and what are you doing with it? I just had this wonderful trip. Well, what are you doing with it? They're getting information, and they go back to get some more information. But how are you incorporating it into your life? What are you getting these lessons? What's changing in your life? Well, I don't crave something. I go, great, that's wonderful. But what else? But that's what you don't do. But what are you? How are you really applying it?
So in your work, do you use this word integration?
It's the way we do things here. Most people will spend a lot of time integrating something.
Uh-huh.
The things we do here, it's like an instantaneous integration.
Okay.
So we're helping people reprogram their subconscious in seconds or minutes rather than let me integrate it for 2 or 3, 4, 5 weeks. It's an
Mhm.
instantaneous integration. A lot of times people are reprogramming their subconscious unaware that they just reprogram their subconscious. They take on a whole nother set of behaviors that I had to call attention to them. Go, you realize you were doing this, this, and this, and this. Now you're doing this, this, this. Those two things are polar opposite each other. Oh, really? You know, so it's geez, we got neurologists studying what we're doing now too,
Yeah.
and because like some of them have come to classes and they went, "You're doing stuff really different here," and so they're testing equipment and running brain scans on people before and after. We got papers coming out in the European Scientific Journal. We have books and all kind of things coming up with the system we're using and how different it is from everybody else's.
Okay, so let's think of this. I have another question. Let's think of this in another way. So integration is,
We're,
in my mind, it's how you are applying what you've just, the
yep,
insights or the download that you had into your life. So if there's an instantaneous integration, what's the measure for how that shows up the next time you have a
yep.
trigger? Yeah.
So okay, great question. Rather than integration, we called it an embodiment process.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
That makes sense to me. Yeah.
Yep. So let's say if somebody gets triggered by a particular circumstance, and maybe it takes them 3 hours or 3 days or 3 weeks before they can come to their senses and go, you know what, if I would have just taken that perspective, I could have been way more effective in my life, right? I'm sure I've had experiences where 3 decades later I'm going, I could have done something 3 decades later and changed my life.
Yeah.
So that's how we measure emotional intelligence, from the time a person gets triggered to when they have a recovery and are able to be in effective action. And people who would normally take 3 hours or longer are now, they may be triggered for a millisecond or second and immediately into effective action. So when people are able to apply an effective action in a state that would normally take them out, one, their confidence goes up, their mental clarity goes up. Instead of finding things to complain about, they find things that they're actually grateful for.
Mm.
And there's a lot of people come to us with anxiety, and there's one word that's the cause of anxiety. There's a direct correlation between this word and anxiety, and the word is not.
Not.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh. I
I,
mean, that's not surprising to me, but I really want to think on that for a long
I don't
time.
like this. I don't like this. I don't want that. I don't want this. And
Mm.
when there's a direct correlation between the word not and how much and the percentage of anxiety. The higher the percentage of knots, the higher the level of anxiety. And it's a sign of suppressed anger and resentment in that person. So they're carrying around anger and resentment. And they use the word not to be able to survive a trauma, which they have anger and resentment about. And once they survive that trauma, it creates all these not perspectives. I'm not good enough. Life shouldn't be this way. And they start looking at everything through all these lenses of what isn't instead of what is.
Yes.
So, make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I can
Definitely.
work with people over a period of time, 2 or 3 weeks, or over months, to have them change that speech pattern. But that sucks. I mean, like I'm from Texas, and I like fast, fun, and easy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, something that takes months, that's a confidence killer, right?
Oh
If you're
my
trying to help
God.
people get confident. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, what the heck? So um, all we have to do is take that person back to that trauma,
Mm.
not in hypnosis or under drugs or anything, but just in a conversation. They have to be able to they have to recall the trauma, and not you don't have to do a whole lot of details with it or anything, but they have to. Most people say you got to forgive, and
Mm.
forgiving, it kind of gets somebody back to okay, but forgiving kind of sucks. They for this process to work, they actually have to find the blessing in that incident and thank the person for it.
They literally have to go find them and thank them. Okay.
No,
All right.
in their
No.
consciousness.
Oh, okay. Okay, good.
Sometimes it's God, sometimes it's life, sometimes it's mom who's been dead for however many years, right?
Good.
But
Yeah, good point.
they have to actually have gratitude for that experience, and when they do, that anxiety they've been harboring inside of them goes away, and instead of speaking knots, they begin to speak what is immediately. And they may not even be aware that they're actually have made that change in their speech habits.
Mm.
And I'll go, hey, when you came in here, you're speaking 80% knots. Now you're speaking 5% knots.
Mm.
So it's an instantaneous pattern shift as soon as that that filter of how they've been viewing the world shifts. Anyway, I love what we do too. We're both working in drugs. You're working on some of the outers, I'm working on some of the inners. So
And I think, okay, so this is this is very similar to a conversation I have with people who are anti-pharmaceutical medication and think that psychedelics should replace all current pharmaceutical interventions. I just think that there's more than one path for people to
Oh, they're
get,
true.
so I'm really grateful that you're doing work and backing it up with research, because that's
Yeah.
what we don't have enough of, frankly, in psychedelics and cannabis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're getting, we're doing a doctor symposium next year where we probably have, I choose know how many doctors we have in our program now, but it's accelerating healing. We even had a guy come to class with Parkinson's where his hand was shaking like this.
Mhm.
Worked with him 20 minutes. His hand went from shaking to in 20 minutes. Um, and it's it's still he probably cured 70% of his symptoms in 20 minutes.
Wow.
And it's still getting some more greater levels coming in of health. Also, his memory has improved. His wife said that they're talking more than they ever have, and it's amazing. Anyway, I I love what we do, and I like what you're doing. I love your energy about all this too. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, listen, results are very motivating. When you see someone's
Yep.
life changing
Yep.
and but I do see a lot of people getting, like I said, stuck in the trip. And it doesn't
Yep.
seem like that's really possible with your work, right?
No.
Yeah,
No.
that's also
Uh,
interesting.
yeah, and with the people getting stuck in when people can educate to the level you are and take what has people get stuck in a trip is when they feel shame and guilt about something, and the shame becomes the chemical overlay that keeps a repetitive habit into place.
That's been my personal experience. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I
So yeah,
also I also just think change is hard. Change is so hard. I mean, maybe not with the methodology, right, that you're working with, because I understand how you are working at a neurobiological level.
uh,
I think that people that are choosing psychedelics, because let's face it, we have a nation that loves drugs, and so they're going to go there
right,
first, right?
right, right,
That when they are confronted with the change that needs to happen to actually get what they want, and I say this to be honest with you, Mark, at the end of March in 2024, I did my first guided psilocybin journey. I had taken mushrooms many times throughout my life
mm,
and had amazing experiences, right? Whether it was connecting with friends, learning a lot about myself, it runs the gamut in terms of dosage, all of that. But what was revealed to me during that journey was integrity. Like, you can't be a person who wants to help others if you can't sit in front of them and say, I have done all these hard things too, and you can do it as well. And
oh,
at that time, all I could do is look at the ways in which I wasn't living with integrity. And as of last month, April, it's been a little over a year. I took a year and cleaned up the things that I needed to clean up so that I could feel like, I can say, yeah, I'm doing the fucking hard work too. Like,
right, awesome. That's a leader. If you leader does the work first, that's awesome. Authentic.
yeah,
You got to be
not
authentic.
easy. Yeah, not easy though.
I tell you what, it's way the hell easier than wallowing in your what pigs wallow in your crap. It's way
Yes.
easier. It's way easier than that life. About 16 years ago, I hated what I was doing. Had a lot of childhood stuff. I had some injuries and stuff too as well, and doing all. And a friend of mine, had my own company. A friend of mine's son was working for me and embezzled a bunch of money from me. And one day, I lost like 95% of my wealth in 120 days. And one day I pulled into my garage, closed the door, and left the motor running. And I was ready to leave, man. And made a prayer. And the next week, I didn't leave it running for very long, but the next week, I met a guy that showed me the bones of the system I'm doing. And once I did that, started to have a taste of that system, I went, "Oh, this is the way. This is really different." It worked real heavily with feelings. With most of those other things I've been doing were mental coaching, results based coaching, And when you produce this result, you produce the next result, and just I was type A personality, so I would just get one thing, and it wasn't enough, and go get another thing. It still wasn't enough, and why didn't I ask for more and all that crap? It was never the things out there were never feeding me. You know what I'm saying? It's still a hole. So
Yeah.
yeah, the way we do it here, we change the chemistry first before we ever started asking. Because if you're in frustration, you're going to be frustrated with your manifestations.
Yes, well said. I don't want to simplify what it seems to me. The difference perhaps is focusing on behavior and intellectualizing your behavior and changing it from this place, your head, versus when you say feelings, right? It's more of a, because are you dealing with oxytocin at all, right? Is that, no, okay.
This is a whole other podcast, man.
Okay,
We're
okay.
yeah, but a little bit. So feelings access memories.
Mhm,
So in other words, if you have a beautiful romantic encounter, right, you can recall the feelings of a beautiful romantic encounter. Go, oh, they were wearing this, the lights were this way. This is what he said. These are the sounds, the smells. You can almost smell things just from your ability to feel, right?
mhm,
Yeah. Okay.
mhm,
Or if it's something terrible too, you can recall all those things as well. And the reason why people can't remember things is because they may have a lot of terrible experiences that they don't want to feel. So what happens? It starts to eat away at their memory. Okay.
mhm,
So what we do is we have the person produce a brand new feeling inside of their body of something great. You can't name what it is.
mhm.
Don't try to mentally, oh, it's going to be the yellow sports car, the blonde, and the X amount of dollars in the bank and all that stuff, because none of that matters. You got to produce the feeling of something great happening, even though you don't have a clue what it is. And the body's got to respond to it before the person can ever see it, not visualize it. See it. And when I'm talking, the difference is a person will visualize having a car, a perfect job, and what this is giving yourself a feeling, and all of a sudden they'll remember their new life at that particular frequency.
Yes.
And it's like 40 hours worth of Netflix gets downloaded in 2 seconds. And it's a visceral experience. And then they have to become that character in that new life. But I can ask when it happens, I can ask them any question about it, and there's an immediate answer. No thinking, no figuring, nothing. An immediate. They're like it's like they're already. It's already living inside of
Hmm.
them. So no thinking. The thinker sucks.
Yes.
Most people are trying to get out of it.
Oh, yeah. All we do is think, because then we can talk ourselves into or out of anything, right?
Yeah,
It gives us a
or
sense of control.
builds excuses.
Right.
That's and
Yeah.
that's what the tough for things for people to give up. It's not their to do the work. It's their identity that's been based on excuses.
That's fair. Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Hmm. Awesome. Anyway, so let's put an end to this one and put it in a can. Um, April, it's such a pleasure to have you on here. And I do have one parting question.
Sure.
And my parting question is, what do you love about life?
Oh, I mean, I don't know if it's because we just celebrated Mother's Day, but I'm going to guess that has nothing to do with it. But I'm really, really grateful for the opportunity to raise my kids.
Awesome. How many children do you have?
Two sons.
Two sons.
Yeah.
And one's a freshman, the other one's out.
One's about to graduate from high school. Yes. And they've just been, I mean, all the cliches are true. My greatest teachers,
Uh-huh.
all of that. So yeah. And I think I'm much closer to reaching my potential because, I really want to be the best realized version of myself so that they know that they have permission to do that too. And it doesn't always mean that you're doing making popular choices.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, and so for people to connect with you, what's the best way for people to connect with you?
You can find the website getsetset.com, which is where all of our educational materials are for psychedelics and for cannabis. You can find me on any of the streaming platforms, including YouTube, with the handle GetSetSet with our podcast episodes and some video as well, not all audio. And I can be emailed at hi@getsetset.com. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, April, thank you so much for being on the show. I love our conversation. You got to go down memory lane with you as well. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. I would like to say one more thing. I'm on Substack at April Pride. That's important. Yes, that's
April
where
Pride
I
on
spend
Substack.
most of my time. Yes. Yeah.
Awesome. Substacks, I like it. Great, great platform.
Yeah.
All right, April. Blessings. Have a great weekend.
Same to you, Mark. Thank you.
You're welcome.